Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Porter. I appreciate you guys logging in on another one of our webinars. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to type those in. But most of this, we have a pretty concise webinar we're going to go through. We're going to try and record when we can, or answer stuff when we can. We might push it off to the end. So we do appreciate you guys taking the time to log into this today. Also, to let you guys know, if you guys have any old, outdated software out there, give me a call. Let's get that thing upgraded, because if it's older than 2008, they're going to be retiring that here in the next couple weeks. So definitely hit me up on that. I'm sitting here with Tony Crawford, who's going to be doing the webinar today on the Copy Monitor and Revit.
Good morning. My name is Tony, and welcome to this webinar. And it will indeed be using Revit for the Copy Monitor process. I'm one of the Revit experts here at CAD-1. My personal weapon of choice is Revit MEP. During this webinar, I'll be using the Revit 1 box 2013 or Revit Neapolitan, or the official name is just Revit, but if you haven't seen it, it's all versions combined. Revit Architecture, Revit Structure, and Revit MEP are all in one box. That's the one that I'll be using. During this webinar, I'll go through the basic process of the Copy Monitor tools, but before we get started, let's take a quick look. If you can hear me, if you can hear us, go ahead and raise your hands, and then we'll watch the screen just to make sure if we don't see any hands raised, then we know that there may be some issues. There we go. Are there some hands going up? Good.
Yep.
Good, yeah. If you can hear me, go ahead and raise your hand. There's a couple things on the screen there. You can see if you want to minimize that console, it's got the double arrows or maybe a red arrow on your screen. If you want to change how you listen, if you cannot hear me, ironically, if you can't hear me, you may have to use the telephone, which is the button on the, oh, hang on. There we go. Sorry about that. Technical difficulty between the keyboard and the chair, if you know what I mean. So, to minimize the console, there are just some screenshots on there. You can change how you listen. If you need to use a telephone, you can click on that. Do you want to raise your hand? There's a button for that. Good, and I'm seeing some hands up, so at least you can hear me. And if you have any questions, you can type those down at the bottom. Depends on what the question is. If you have something like just a clarification on something I've said, I'll try and answer it right away. If it's a larger question, I may wait till the end. Let's see, is there anything else? I think I covered everything there.
That is everything.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first portion of this webinar will cover the most common use of the Copy Monitor tools, which specifically is when the consultants, basically the engineers usually, will copy and monitor the levels and the grid lines from the architect's Revit model. And then I'll also go on in the second portion of the class. I'll go through some of the processes of copy and monitoring specific fixtures. And this tool is not in all versions of Revit, but you can see how it'll be useful. I just want to let you know there's kind of going to be two pieces of it, and you may not have all the tools depending what you have. The Revit 1 box has these extra tools, and the Revit MEP has these extra tools. So I'll go through those. Basically, I'll be copying and monitoring specific fixtures from an architectural file into a Revit MEP file. So most of it will be available to everybody, and especially at the beginning is the processes that just about everybody in Revit uses. But it will be from an MEP perspective. That's what I'm used to. All right, a couple of assumptions. Well, let me skip over the assumptions. I'm just basically assuming that everybody's on the team is using Revit. The architecture is using Revit. Structure is using Revit. The engineer is using Revit. So let me jump into this slide. The Copy Monitor tool, what it does is it monitors elements between the host project, which is typically the architect's Revit model, between the host project and a linked model, or one that can be done within your own project. We don't use that tool, use it that way very often. So when one team, what the benefit of this is that when one team changes a monitored element, such as a level or a grid, other teams are automatically notified so that they are aware of the change and they can respond accordingly. The typical workflow is that consultants will copy monitor the levels from the architecture file into their own files. That is almost universal. Additionally, consultants, the engineers, can copy and monitor the column grids, the grid lines from the architecture file, or if the structural engineer, the structural designer is in charge of the columns, they may have ownership of the column grids. And we can certainly copy and monitor column grids from the structural Revit file. These elements, the levels and the grids, are basically used by all the disciplines, and they do need to be identically located among the different disciplines so that electrical engineer is using the same grid lines as the structural engineer is using the same levels as the architect. Everybody needs to be coordinated on this on these items. So we do have additional capability. We can copy monitor levels and grids. We can copy monitor columns as long as they're not slanted. We can copy monitor walls, floors, and openings. Now, the second part of this, I'll be going through the batch copy, for lack of a better name. And it has some additional capabilities. It can automatically copy fixtures of a specified category from a linked file into the current project. This is only available for the MEP portion or in Revit 1 box. And you'll see why, because you can only copy, this allows you to copy monitor air terminals, data devices, electrical fixtures, lighting fixtures, plumbing fixtures, sprinklers, and a few other MEP categories. You know, not every category, but most of the MEP stuff. So if you feel like you're missing out on something, you know, unless you're working with air terminals and data devices and electrical fixtures, you probably wouldn't utilize this tool. And this step can require a little more setup and definitely a little more post-processing and adjustments to use this. So not everybody, even those with capability, don't always choose to use this. And you can see there's just a little screenshot with two additional buttons that appear. So let's go ahead and do this. Let me switch over to Revit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and monitor the levels from an architectural line. Let me switch over to Revit.
So when you're doing copy monitor, you're going to let the architect know you're copy monitoring their levels?
It is, usually it's assumed, especially the levels.
Okay.
Yeah, but it wouldn't hurt to let them know that you are using the architect's levels. And a couple things on that. If the architect changes a level, renames it, moves it up 6 inches, down 2 feet, whatever it is, the copy monitor tool allows me to see that as soon as I get their updated file, as soon as I reload it, Revit lets me know, hey, something's changed. Here, take a look at it. If they, and this is the important part, if the architect would delete the level and put another one in its place, even if it's the same name, exact same place, doesn't matter. To Revit, that's a new element. So that doesn't work as well. Revit will just tell you that the level's been deleted, and you may have to look and see, has a new one been put in its place.
Perfect.
So I do need to be in an elevation view. I like to go to the south view, and if you haven't done this, I can just double click on this elevation marker. It takes me to an elevation view. So while I'm in here, I can see that I have two things of my own. Out of my template, so this is a brand new file, a clean file, and I've linked in the architect's model. That was one of the assumptions, that everyone's working in Revit, and that you link in or X-reference in each other's file. So the two things that I started with were level 1 and level 2. The gray, the halftone, that's the architect's X-reference or link. If I select that, just note that I get the entire link. I get the entire file. These two things are mine. Let's say I need to do a roof plan, or in other files there may be a 3rd floor, or 4th floor, or 5th floor. In this example, I only have a roof plan. So let's go ahead and do that.
We do apologize for that pinging noise. It's when people come in the webinar, we get pings on that, apparently.
Oh, is somebody asking about that?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a way to mute it, but I couldn't tell you. And it's buried in the settings, and it gets changed every time. GoToMeeting seems to update itself a lot. Yeah, apologies for that. Yeah, every time someone joins or leaves. So let's go to the Collaborate tab. That's the first place I'll go, is on the Collaborate tab. On the Coordinate panel of the ribbon, I have a Copy Monitor tool. I'll go ahead and get that started. I can see I do have options. I could do it using my current project. That works largely the same, but it'd be a limited opportunities. Typically, if it's a really small project, and multiple disciplines are all using the same file, like the architect and the engineer and the structural are all using the exact same Revit file, then I could do it as a current project. Otherwise, I'm going to select a link, and it's important to note, let me zoom out just a little bit. If I hover over any part of this file, any visible object, you can see it highlights, turns blue. If I happen to miss the item, if I click off to the side, I get a white space, the command just ends. And now I'm out of that command, and it's trying to select everything. So I have to start the command over. Just a minor tip. So I'll select a link, hover over any part of that, And the reason you have to click on the link visually is just to tell Revit, if I have multiple links in here, do I want to select the architect's file or the structural file or the low voltage file or whose link is in there. So I've selected the link. I want to go to, first let's go to the options and take a look at some of the options in here. And so far everything in here is common to everybody, to every different discipline of Revit. I have levels, options for grid lines, options for columns, options for walls, and options for floors. Now, for example, if I don't have any columns in here, this tab won't show up. Or rather, if the architect's file or whatever file I have linked in does not have any columns, for example, this tab won't show up. Right now, I'm just going to copy the levels. So I'm just going to look at this, just going to look at the options in here. The original type, the left side of this dialog box, I'm copying from, this is what's in the architect's file. In this case, it's the architect's. Could be any discipline. And the new type, I'm copying to my file. Do I want to do the same type? Do I want to do, I have 3 different types within that family in mind. I could choose another one, no head, plenum, or just not copy this, but I do want to copy this type. I'll just use the same type of the same family. Offset level, personally I've never used this, but I've been on the MEP side. For a structural, if you're a structural engineer copying in levels, you may want to offset this. Typically the architects and the mechanical, electrical, plumbing all work off the top of the slab, the finished floor, but the structural, you may want to, if you know this is going to be an 8-inch slab, floor slabs, you may want to offset your levels 4 inches, assuming that you'd work off the bottom of the slab. That's where the offset could be used. Reuse levels with the same name. So for example, I already have a level 1 and I already have a level 2. Just for now, let me leave this as don't reuse matching levels and don't reuse levels with the same name. And then I'll come back to this in a minute. I can add a suffix, I can add a prefix. Let's add a prefix. I'll just call it CAD-1. And then we'll add take the exact same name and then add CAD-1 to the beginning. So these are some of my settings. I'll close out of these settings and let's run the command. Right now I'll just choose copy. That will copy and monitor. So I've started the command. If you're ever in doubt, look at the status bar in the bottom left of your screen in Revit. It's telling me what to do next. Select elements as specified in the options. Okay, so I need to click on the elements. Note that now as I hover over a level, it will let me select an individual level, and I just clicked on it, in the architect's file. Previously, if I clicked on that, I would get the entire file, the entire XREF, the entire link. It tells me that the level head circle, that family, has been renamed because I already had one with that name in my file. So now I just copied one in, but it won't let you have a duplicate, so it just renamed it circle 1. Just added the number 1 at the end. Not a problem. So I've copied in level 2. Let me also copy in roof reference 1 in this case. So it added CAD-1 as a prefix. Let's finish out of this. Hit the big green checkbox. Now, in my file, it looks pretty much the same, but you can see I have a few levels that I can select live in my file. So if I hide the architect's file, hide the XREF, hide the link, this is everything that's live in my file. I have levels. But now you can see I have a couple of new levels, the roof 1 and level 2. And yeah, I got ahead of myself in those settings. I shouldn't have unchecked the reuse levels because I did want to actually reuse that level. So honestly, let me just delete this one. I'm just going to remove the CAD level 2. It tells me, oh, monitored element has been deleted. In fact, there's another safety tip. Wasn't planning on covering this one, but because I deleted that while it was monitoring, it now appears as a coordination monitor. Something is amiss. Revit says, hey, you've deleted a level. The architect has a level 2. You don't. So I'm going to undo that. And before I delete it, I have a button to stop monitoring. I'm going to go ahead and click on the stop monitoring. Now this level is no longer a monitor. It's no longer watching the relationship between the architect's level 2 and my level 2. So now if I delete this, delete. Now I don't get any warning, no errors. I'm good to go. So far we've copied in roof level 1. And it might be a little hard to see, but when that's selected, there it is, I have a little heart monitor symbol on my screen. And there it is. No, it's not showing the circle. Off to the left, if I have selected a monitored element, it gives me this little monitor symbol. That tells me it's monitored. I can also see up at the top to stop monitoring. Okay, so let me bring back, oh, I need to, bear with me 1 second. I'll bring back the architect's link so we can see that. Unhide category, turn that off. There we go. So now I'm back where I started, but now I have a roof level. We need to make level 2 match. So there's a couple different ways to do that. I can, since I already have a level 2, I can just reuse that. Let me just align my level 2 with the architect's level 2. There. Now they match, but there's no monitoring, there's no relationship. So let me go back to the Collaborate tab, copy monitor button. We'll select the link, same steps again, and you tell Revit, what file, what link am I monitoring from. Click on that, takes me into sketch mode, where I can do the copy command and the monitor command. I can do the options. So let me go back into settings, and I'll reuse levels with the same name, and I'll reuse matching levels. So now I have a level 2. I can set up the relationship. So now if I go into the copy command, it will reuse my level 2 and just match it to the architect's level 2. And also, the copy command also does monitoring, or in this case, I could just skip right to that monitor button. What the monitor tool does is it sets up a relationship between existing elements. So if I already have a copy of it, I can tell Revit, okay, monitor, set up a relationship and monitor the relationship between my level 2 and the architect's level 2. If either of them change, if anything changes in that relationship, the name, the type, the elevation, let me know. And it brings up a dialog box, tells me a coordination review needs to be performed. So I already have a copy, so I don't need to run the copy command, which also does the monitor. In this case, I just want the monitor half of that command. So I'll start the command, and I need to tell Revit to set up a relationship between my level 2, and when in doubt, always look at the status bar on the bottom left of this bottom left. Pick an element to monitor. Okay, I'll pick an element to monitor, and then it tells me pick a corresponding element to monitor. So I'm telling Revit, set up a relationship between this level 2 and that level 2. And we should be good. I'll go ahead and click the big green checkbox to finish this. So now that if I click on this level 2, I should have, if I zoom out far enough, because it puts it in the center of the object, the heart rate monitor. And now in the classroom, I would ask if everybody followed that, and to see if you noticed, did I miss anything? Because I did miss something. Actually, I should go back in there and copy monitor level 1. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip that. Actually, I shouldn't copy monitor. I should just monitor it, because it already matches, but I want to monitor the relationship between my level 1 and the architect's level 1. Okay, now that we have these levels in here, if you've worked with Revit, you know that I can move my levels, align to snap. So these 3 are my levels. The halftone ones, the grayed out ones, are still in the XREF file. And I don't need the roof level 3 or 2, and I don't need the top of footings. From MEP point perspective, I just don't need those. And let me skip back to the PowerPoint slide. That one. That one. There we go. So it had to be in an elevation view so we could see these levels, and we copy monitored the levels from the architectural link. Chris, is there any questions been popping up? I haven't been watching the questions.
I have nothing.
Okay, just making sure. The next step, we have levels in here. So now I could, now that I have these levels, now that I have a roof level, I can go in here and create a roof plan, for example. If I had a 3rd floor, 4th floor, same thing, I could create those. Previously, I could not create a roof level plan because I didn't have that level. Okay, so now I have a roof plan. It looks similar to the floor plan. I'm going to go back to floor plan level 1 and work in this one for a while. So far I haven't drawn any elements. Everything you see on here, except for the elevation markers, is in the linked file. In fact, if I turn that off, this is all that's available. This is all that I have live in my file. It's in this floor plan anyway. Let me bring that back. So the next thing I want to do and set up a project is copy monitor, I want to bring in grid lines. Now this step is optional, because why not just show the architectural linked grids, and then I don't have to go through these steps. That's certainly a viable option, but it doesn't always look right. As you can see in this one, I have some of the bubbles on the top, some of the symbols are on the bottom, some are on the left, but not all of them. Some of them are on the right, and they don't go, not every one. So I want to create my own so that I can control how they appear, and also the extents. If they're mine, I can control how they look a little bit better.
So we do have a question. Does it make a difference in the sequence of whether you pick your level first or the architect's? It appears to be backwards regarding the prompts.
That's an excellent question, and I'd have to say I might agree with that being backwards. And what they were asking is, when I was in my elevation view, when I was doing the copy or the monitor command, or the monitor specifically, so pick an element to monitor, pick a corresponding element to, I forget exactly how it was phrased. But yeah, I can see how it would look backwards. And to be honest, I never remember which is which, but I don't have to, so I haven't wasted any brain power on that one. Revit will only let you click them in the right order. It will only let you click yours first and then the LinkedIn one, or whichever way is correct. So you don't need to know, and it doesn't have to be perfectly clear, because it won't allow you to do it backwards. I guess that's the bottom line.
Also, should you always use your own levels, or can you use the architectural levels with copy monitor?
Either way is fine. In this one, I did not have a roof level, so the copy monitor using the copy command was the easiest way to do that. I did have a level 2 and I did have a level 1, so I could do it. Well, there is an advantage if you have in your template a level 1 and level 2. For a while, and I'm embarrassed to say that I did this, I was copy monitoring in the levels 1 and level 2, and I deleted mine. But when I deleted mine, I lost all the settings, the presets on those views, and I had to start over. By having those in my templates, and instead of deleting mine and copying in, now I just do the monitor for level 1, level 2, and it wouldn't hurt to have level 3 in your template, or level 4, depending on what you normally work on. So that way I can already have those views set up, I can already have settings applied to those views, I can have those views on sheets, and they would need some adjustment, but I already have them there, and then by just doing the monitor and then using my existing ones from my template that are already in my file, by doing that it can save me some time. So I hope that answered the question. Does that look?
Yep.
Like we answered it? All right. Let me go back to, so we've got our levels in here that allowed me to create a view and to align the views. And if you'd notice, my level 2 was off by a couple feet. Mine defaulted to 10 feet because there was no way for me to predict what would be in this project. By matching it now, my view ranges are correct, or if not, they're just much closer. So now I have a floor plan set up for level 1 and level 2, which is now correct, and a roof plan. Those are all, they all exist now, and they match the architects. At least the level, the base of it matches. So let's do grid lines. Now this, you don't have to do grid lines, but there are some advantages to it. And by doing the copy monitor, I don't have to worry quite as much about the grid lines moving later on in the project, because Revit will tell me if they've moved, and with a couple clicks, I can just make mine align and have Revit do it automatically. Or if the name changes, I can have Revit change that automatically. So let's start the copy monitor command. You do have to be in a view where you can see the grid lines. I'll start the command. I'll select the link again because this is a LinkedIn file. I'll hover over it, and when in doubt, just hover, and Revit will tell you it's a Revit link, it's a Revit model, what the name of the file is, etc., etc. I click on that, it takes me into sketch mode, and now I can do the copy monitor. This time I want to do the copy command all the way through because I don't have any grid lines where I can set up the monitor relationship, so I need to bring in a copy, and that will do that part automatically. So I'll start the command, I'll pick on each one. It tells me that's been renamed. Okay, I had a family with the exact same name, happened to be in my file, that's fine. The first one sometimes takes a little bit longer, the computer has to think, and then it goes fairly quickly, about as fast as I can click. I don't know if you can see I'm getting a small hourglass as I'm clicking on each one of those. And this might seem a little tedious, And you're right, it is. So now I'll show you a shortcut in just a second. So I've copied all the horizontal grid lines. I just went through the copy command. Let me go ahead and finish this. I hit the big green check box, just that those are now live in my file. And if I select one of them, there you can see, hopefully the halftone shows up. I have two grid lines. The halftoned ones on the right are linked in from the architect's file. The dark ones on the left are mine. So I have control over the ones on the left. I can change their size, how they look, where they align. I can use scope boxes to control them. But I need to go back and do the vertical one, so let's go ahead and do those. Go back into Collaborate, copy monitor, select link, hover over the correct file. I'll start my copy command, and this time I'll point out in the options bar, and whenever you're working in Revit, it's always a good idea to watch your options bar. If you're coming from AutoCAD, typically it's the commands that you would get after you run a command, or the options you would get after running a command, like say you run the mirror command in AutoCAD, afterwards you get, would you like to delete the original elements, yes or no? In Revit, it's before you run the command or while you're running the command, it's up here. So in this case, I have the option to do multiple. If I check that button, I have the finish and the cancel are now up here. So I can do a big crossing window. I just selected all my grid lines. I didn't have to click on each individual one of them.
Always left to right, or?
It doesn't matter. Left, it's the same as AutoCAD. If you're coming from an AutoCAD world, right to left, anything that box touches will be selected. Left to right, anything that's completely inside that box will be selected. Okay. So I did go right to left so that I just had to touch them. But I may have gotten a few extra, maybe there's a window or a wall or a door that I happen to touch, or an elevation marker. So I'm going to go to this filter, and okay, it tells me I only have grid lines. Just to demonstrate that, to see if I do a box and I'm too big. Yeah, okay, I got way too much stuff this time. Now I can uncheck floors and walls because I only wanted the grid lines. Oh, it looks like I missed, I got a couple extra grid lines. Anyway, the filter will let me do that. If I noticed right away that I got too many, I can hold down the Shift key. It's hard to see, but there's a tiny little minus appears next to my mouse. While the Shift is down, I can remove from the selection. Anyway, now that I've done that, it is important to hit the little finish button while you have the multiple check, and then I can go to the big finish button. So little finish and big finish, that's one of the few times where Revit uses two terms to mean two slightly different things. That one threw me off the first few times I used this command. I didn't hit the little finish, I just hit the big finish, and then I clicked off somewhere else and it just lost my whole selection. Nothing really happened. Okay, so the command is done, and so now I have grid lines live in my file. What that looks like, bear with me one second. There they go. Now all you're seeing is items that are live in my file. All these grid lines are live, so now I can go in and control them because I want to clean up these bubbles a little bit. And so let me see, is there anything else before I clean that up? I'll go ahead and clean up these bubbles. If you haven't already seen that, I can go through every time I select a level, I get a checkbox. So I'll go through and do that.
All right, while he's gonna do that, I just want to send a shout out to one of our technicians here. We were just most of CAD-1 was at Autodesk University right after Thanksgiving, and one of our civil technicians, or our civils technician here, Brian Healy, received the Autodesk Expert Elite. Last year he was the Augie Top Dog, so he's doing some big things there. He actually got the chance to get an award from Carl Bass and shake his hand, so big shout out to him on that one. Also, you know, if you guys ever have any questions about anything, feel free to hit us up. Just give me a call. I'm usually always here. And I think we also picked we picked a month for our open house, or a customer appreciation day, and it's going to be in June. So watch your newsletters for that. That is a chance for you guys to come out. It's for us to give a thanks back to you guys. We're going to be doing tips and tricks, and last year we had Lynn Allen come out here and join us, the Autodesk Technical Evangelist. So definitely check that one out, and check the newsletters as they come through, or go up to the CAD-1 site. It's always being new and improved as often as possible on that. So.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I didn't know we had the date set for the...
well, we have the month set.
Okay.
Still.
Okay, so I just cleaned up the horizontal grid lines just to save some time. I didn't do the vertical ones, but I'm sure you figured out how to do those. So now, so there's my first lighting. Let me go to another first floor plan and look at the grid lines, and they're not cleaned up. See how the bubbles are on the left, still up here, they're not always on the right. So I'd have to do that for every single view. And there's another tool that I'm embarrassed to admit how long it took me before I ran across this. When I have grid lines selected, and it is important to have them selected when you choose the button, propagate extents up at the top. What that does is, well, let me go ahead and click on it. For the selected datums, or to the grid lines, apply the extents from this view to the following views. Oh, great. So now I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. About a dozen different views. I can fix those grid lines, fix these bubbles in all of these views. Hit OK. And now if I go back to my first floor ceiling plan, notice that the grid lines are all fixed. In fact, I can hide this again really quickly. There, you can see that's a little better. That's a real time saver. So you don't have to make the intern go brain dead while having them fix all the grid lines. So propagate extents. If you have all the grids selected, you get that option. Oh, and did you notice these grid lines? This is how they came in from the linked file. They weren't quite right. So to fix that one, fix this other one, and then I could run this command again, select those three, propagate extents. I'll just do it for 1-ceiling elect if I can find it. There we go. And now if I go back into this one, you can just see that it's been fixed here, in all the views, or all the views that I selected. So that's just an extra quick little tip. Let me, shoot, I need to bear with me 1 second while I bring back the LinkedIn file, hide that category. All right. So that covers the steps that I think are pretty universal. Just about everybody brings in the grid lines and the levels. There we go. So we copy monitored the levels, and then we copy monitored the grid lines. So the next part, let me grab one of those questions in just a second, and then we'll get into the batch copy where we bring in specific MEP elements. Okay. Somebody passed along, Dan pointed out that propagate extents does not work for dependent views. To be honest, I haven't tried that, so I'll just share that with everybody. Propagate extents does not work for dependent views. Now I'm thinking about that and why it wouldn't or why it would, but yeah, I'm going to have to play with that after this is over. But yeah, I'm thinking of the dependent views. They have their own crop region, so I'm just thinking how that would affect it. But yeah, I'll have to play with that. Thanks, Dan. The next step, the next portion of this webinar, is I'm going to cover bringing in fixtures from the architect's file, and this specifically would affect MEP. The first part, you can bring in columns into structurally. If the architect puts in the columns originally, the structural engineer can copy those, and floor slabs and structural walls, so that they can share those. They can start off in the architect's file, and some firms will coordinate that ahead of time. So, okay, after this phase, these are load-bearing walls. After a certain phase, the structural engineer will have control of those, and the architect will copy monitor from the structural file, or vice versa. There's some flexibility in there. The important part with that is to just coordinate it. Know ahead of time who's handling it. Otherwise, you end up with duplicate work, and everybody's, multiple people are spending time on this, and if one discipline changes it and the other one doesn't, it's just important to coordinate things ahead of time, both for walls, grid lines, levels, who's going to control it, as well as columns and walls and slabs, as well as this next phase, we're going to look at copying in some lighting fixtures. You can bring in lighting fixtures, plumbing fixtures. Those are probably the most common. You can also bring in electrical outlets, data outlets, mechanical equipment, but it's not very often, at least that I've run across, where the architect will put in the locations for air handling units, mechanical units, air terminals, maybe. So I'll go through that part. So, well, let me read off this, go through the slide. What the batch copy does, these additional tools, is it automatically copies fixtures of a specified category, such as lighting fixtures or plumbing fixtures, from the linked file into your current project. This allows primarily MEP designers to use layout of fixtures and equipment from the from the LinkedIn Architects model. You start the process the same as before, but you have a couple different options. We'll choose coordination settings, and then batch copy. I still have options, but now I have coordination settings and additional button. And this one does have its own complications. Some adjustments might be required after you bring this in. It's a powerful tool. Some places choose not to use it, try it out and then choose not to use it because of these additional complications. Others have found not really a workaround, but there's some additional steps. They found that it still saves some time, but it does cause some additional steps. And then after adjustments, we'll need to perform a coordination review. So let me jump back to Revit. And so I'll go back to the Collaborate tab, same as before. We'll do the copy monitor, same as before. I'll select a link, and I'll point out that you can see I have lighting fixtures in here. Oh, let me start the command again. I'll hover over the link. Takes me into the copy monitor, takes me into sketch mode, and here's where I'll look at the coordination settings, and I'll look at the batch copy. The first thing I'll do is go into the coordination settings. And so it already knows which link. See, apply the settings is grayed out because it already knows that. I want to go down to lighting devices, and you do have to choose this on the left first before going to the right because you have these options for everyone. Instead of copying individually, I want to allow batch copy. And if I do the batch copy, I want to specify type mapping. If I specify type mapping here, that brings up another category on the left. If I go to that category, oops, lighting devices, let me fix that. I don't want lighting devices, I want lighting fixtures. I'll allow batch copy, and I'll specify the type mapping. That brings up lighting fixtures. When I click on that, now you can see in the host model, the linked model on the left, they have two different light types in use. They have a emergency recessed 2x4 and a troffer 2x4. So let's say, for example, let's start with a troffer on the bottom. I have these options. I can copy the original, just bring in the exact same family. It'll import that family into my file if I don't already have it. Or I could choose not to copy that type, or I could choose, I have two emergency fixture types, two families. Oh, I know it's one family, two type. And I have four different options for a plain recessed fixture. You know what, for this option, let's just copy the original. For the emergency, I have one, let's see, 2x4, 120. That's the one that I want to choose. I have one in my file. I know it works. Maybe I have some special parameters in there for scheduling. Maybe I have multiple connectors in there so I can put it up to an emergency circuit in addition to a switch circuit. So I want to specify, I'm going to tell Revit that unlike the first one, for this one, I want to, when I link it in, instead of using the original, I want to replace it with one family from my company, from my standards, from my library. And I'm doing these two different ways just to demonstrate that. And I think that should be it. We'll just choose, I'll save and close this. So those coordination settings have been set. Now I'll start the batch copy command. And here's where it's a little bit different than the previous one. I'll start the command. It asks me, it gives me yet another chance. There's actually three different places where I can specify the type mapping. I've already done that, so let's skip to just copy the fixtures. And this step will take a minute. So, I don't know, Chris, do you have any other promotions to talk about?
One thing I was going to talk to you guys about, too, is our health check. What we used to do was, we didn't really have a name wrapped around it, but we've given it the health check moniker of where we go out and basically see how you guys are doing on your projects. We interview everybody at the company that is involved in projects, and then we not only talk with the principals, but we also talk with everybody else that's working in the drawings, looking for ways to speed up the process. So if you guys are interested in any of that, a lot of our companies, well, not a lot, but there's been a 10-plus companies I've been working with that have taken that on and realized time and cost savings by bringing us into the office and showing, I hate saying it this way, but bad habits that have been developed by creating your own workarounds and such, and versus kind of the best practice that we've learned in working with multiple companies. So if you guys are interested in that, hit me up pretty much anytime you guys want. Shoot me an email. Let me know if you want us to come out there, basically interview you guys. That process can take up to a week. The interview process is usually a full day also. So, and it is a billable thing. So, let me know if you're interested in that.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And I can say, having worked with a few different companies, several different companies, and getting tech calls, that yeah, I've seen a lot of bad habits. Yeah. And sometimes there was a workaround because something didn't exist several versions of Revit, several versions ago within Revit. I know until Revit 2011, 10 or 11, from the MEP side, there was no cable tray. There was no conduit. You had to do a workaround if you were going to do something like that. Again, on the MEP side, for copying in, using room numbers, there was 2 different methods. Neither of them worked great. And now there is a third method that's faster, quicker, easier, better. It doesn't apply for everybody, but if you didn't know it exists, you might still be using one of those older methods, just because you didn't know that there'd been a change. So I've seen that, as I'm working through there. And now my file is up, so you can probably see the lights are darker now. I have these lights; these are mine. In fact, there is. If I do select all instance, oh, it won't let me do it. Okay, never mind. I was going to do a count on how many lights there were, but I won't give you that count. There's, I believe, 100 and something lights. So with one step, I brought in hundreds of lights, a lot of them anyway, and they're the exact same light in the exact same place, the same host. And if the architect, because their file is the one I brought it in from, if they move one of these lights, Revit lets me know. Pops up with a dialog box, says, "Hey, coordination monitor is required," and then to get more specific, you have to run that command, run coordination monitor. So all of these lights are in here. You can see it's got the little heart rate. It tells me that this is being monitored. Oh, and Chris is pointing out that a couple of these lights aren't correct, and you probably, yes, that's very much true, and that's why some places don't use this command. What happened here is the insertion point or the origin point is different. And that's why I went through and did one as copy the original. The other one I overwrote, said, okay, where the architect has emergency light X, I want to put in emergency light Y. Same 2x4, same voltage, but mine's a little bit different. Maybe have additional properties, different parameters, helps with scheduling for whatever reason. But I also had a different insertion point. So theirs might have been in the center and mine was on the corner, or vice versa. Revit put them in at the same origin point, but then the geometry didn't match. So obviously what I can do, I can select all of those that are off. I can do a move command, and I can put them back where they belong. Now they match. And oh, it's already went away, but it told me a coordination review is required, because Revit's monitoring the relationship between the original, I must have bumped something there, between the original location, between mine and the architect's, based on their insertion point, at least originally. So now that I've moved it, Revit says, hey, something's changed. The insertion points don't match anymore. Something's changed. You need to run a coordination review. So I'll run that. We'll ignore that for right now. Select the link, and it tells me, all right, let me try that again. Coordination review. Select, uh-oh.
You lost.
My lights are gone. All right, I don't know what I bumped on the keyboard there. I'm going to hit undo. Undo is your friend. Oh. Yeah. I'm not quite sure what I bumped. Oh, I know what I did. Operator error. So you get another chance to watch. Oh, no, I don't want to do that again, because that took several minutes. Yeah, my bad. I was talking and clicking, and I don't do really good, apparently, when I'm talking and clicking at the same time. So I ended up canceling that batch copy. So let me just talk you through the steps, because I don't want to take your time going through that again, unless you have more to talk about, Chris.
No, I have a question. Well, I mean, since I do it at the end about the architectural link being half-toned, or is there another setting?
Oh, excellent question. I can answer that one. So let me do that instead of focusing on my misclick, which was a very, cost 2 minutes, that one misclick.
Yep.
Additional settings. Wondering if your halftone on your screen as it's going through this webinar, is it too dark or too light? I did adjust it just a little to make it darker so that it would show up in the webinar. I set mine to 60%. This is a global setting, and this is an excellent one. If you've had trouble, if your manager says, oh, I don't like Revit, the prints are too light, they're too dark, they don't look right, this will affect the halftone. In fact, let me just crank it down to, I don't know, 10% for my whole project. And this affects every view in your project unless you've overridden it in another way. I'll set my halftone to 10%, and you can see everything that was, exactly, you can barely see it. Everything that was halftone is now really light.
Yeah.
If I set it up to 90% or whatever, now they're going to be very similar to the black. Might be a little hard to see which is halftone and which is black. So I'll set that back to 50 to 60.
I'd say you almost develop your own personal preferences on that if it's within your office, as long as you can discern between what was underneath and what's on top of what you're putting on top.
Exactly. That's something where every office is going to be different, and you may need to adjust that based on your plotter, printer. Are you using an OSE, an HP? Is it a laser? Is it a pen plotter? Well,
if you guys want to type in what visibility you guys put it on, I'll kind of look at it and see if there's a common ground. Like Dan, if you always set it to 50 or 40, let me know, and I'll let everybody else know what is what everybody else is kind of doing out there. You can just type that in as a question. I'll just read them, or
yeah,
an average.
Yeah, if there's a standard, if you guys have been checking into that, and if most companies end up setting it to 70 or 75, just to kind of let you know what other companies are doing. So normally at this point you would see that I have a couple of lights are different. I would realign those, and then Revit tells me that a coordination review is required. I would go into my coordination review, and then I can go through the dialog box and pick the specific elements. And in this case, I would choose, since I moved them to what's really the right location, I have to tell Revit, choose the option accept difference. And basically what that's telling Revit is keep monitoring these two, monitor mine versus the original, and if anything changes, make this the new normal. So now that they're really on top of each other, keep monitoring it, but start as this as your reference point now instead of the original point where the insertions were the same. And there was something else I was going to show you, but I'm going to skip that for the sake of time. Because they didn't line up, that's the reason that some firms choose not to use this tool, because then you have to go in and move them manually. And you can, depends on how they came in. I may be able to manually adjust, if there's 50 lights in here, I could move 50 at the same time, because they'll probably come in consistent anyway. Even they'll all be off by 2 feet, 2 foot to the south. And then it depends, and if for the architects that are still listening, this is where something will affect the downstream consultants and won't affect you at all. See, if you put in some of these lights here, these are symmetrical. They look the same whether they're rotated 180 degrees or not. But the insertion point is moved. So it looks the same to you, has no effect when it's in the original file, but when an MEP links it in, if they do this batch copy, anything that's been rotated 180, say you inserted from, drawing a wall from left to right versus right to left. If you insert this on the bottom left corner or the top right corner, and then maybe rotate it, in the MEP file, the ones that have been rotated, those will be flipped and come in this case, they'll be off by 4 feet. So it's just one thing that will, it doesn't show in your file, but it will affect the files downstream.
One of the things that Dan, one of our customers, had mentioned was that halftone is defined by their large format printer. They said the halftone is 65 to be able to print a full-size PDF at half size. So thank you for that comment, Dan. Will I automatically get a coordination review alert if the linked model changes, or will I have to update the linked file to receive the coordination alert?
Can you read that question again? That sounded like the first half is yes, but then I wasn't sure.
Will I automatically get a coordination review alert if the linked model changes, or will I have to update the linked file to receive a coordination alert? I believe you have to update the linked file to get that, because if you're in the model and somebody changes something, you wouldn't know that anything's been changed until...
Yeah, you do have to reload. And so what I'm going to do here, I'll demonstrate that. So that's an excellent question. So I've got grid 41. I will move this grid. Let's go here and let's move it up. Oh, not 7 feet. Let's go 4 feet. So I've moved grid 41. Oh, I'm in the architect's file. I opened up the architect's file to simulate this. So I opened up their file. So I'm playing architect for just a minute. I moved their grid, and I added 2 lights. You see these 2 lights? Let me fix that. These 2 lights that are sideways, I just added those 2. So I'll close this. I'll save it. So this simulates you getting an updated file. So that's a week later. The architect's made some changes, and right now I had to unload it so that I could change that. Now Revit doesn't immediately notify you of every change because, for one, you're probably not connected to their network, so you're not connected to their file live. Unless you're doing a VPN directly and getting every single change every single minute,
or your firm does something along that line. But it's
going
to be a rarity that's going to happen. So yeah.
And here's where I get, again, this dialog box. Instance of linked Revit file needs coordination review. Revit says, hey, something's changed. You need to go and do a review. So brain freeze, collaborate tab. I have a coordination review dialog box. And right now it's only monitoring the grid lines. And there you can see the one that changed. The 41, the dark one is mine. The gray one is the architect's. So I'm in my coordination review command. When I tell Revit, click on this link, it says, hey, under new changes, the category of grid lines, because that's the only thing it found that changed, the position, the relative position of the grids is the category, and it says, hey, the grid moved. If I expand this, it says the linked file, elementary school architecture, grid line 41, and its unique ID number. If you haven't played around with that in Revit, take a look at that. It can be pretty useful, especially for things like this. And my grid, 41, has changed. So something says the grid line moved. What do I want to do? I have 4 options. I can postpone. It says, I don't know. Let me call the architect. That might be a mistake. Maybe the intern or the principal touched the Revit file and accidentally moved the grid. So I need to call the architect and find out. I could reject it. It says, no, keep mine where it is. I don't want to make this change. I could accept the difference. Says, and for a grid line, I wouldn't choose this, but maybe this is what I would have chosen when I readjusted my lights. It's, okay, make this the new normal. That's what accept difference means. So, okay, now the difference is they're 4 feet apart. Remember that and go from here. Or what I want to do for this one is modify grid 41, modify my grid to match theirs. Hit OK, and boom, my grid line has just aligned, and it's still monitoring it. If I click on my grid, I still get the monitoring button. If I zoom out, I get the heartbeat monitor.
Which is a little plug for a health check too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to make a comment here. There's a comment more than a question. Deleting architectural elements like ceilings is a headache to MEP consultants. So that's more of a statement than a question, but yeah.
Yeah, it's ceilings. The MEP, the engineers use ceilings as a host for their lights. I mentioned this earlier. I'll mention it again because it can be, like you said, it can be a headache. And it says, he said, deleting architectural elements. If you delete a ceiling and put another one in its place, maybe you're changing from a gypboard ceiling to a 2x2 grid or a 2x2. Please don't delete it. Just change the type.
Please.
If you need to move it, go ahead and move the existing one. If you need to change the type, just change the type. Because even deleting it and putting another identical one in the same place, Revit sees that as a different element, and those ID numbers I pointed out a second ago, that's what Revit's using. It's using those ID numbers, and Revit sees that as something new.
Here's another question.
Okay.
Once the electrical engineer copies light fixtures, what is the effect to the architect's plan? Does he or she need to delete the fixtures? Will this create holes in her ceiling? So basically, the architect picks some light fixtures, just say a standard 2x4 light, and the MEP electrical engineer says, I'm going to basically, let's just say, well, how would they do that? Can you read it again? Sorry. Electrical engineer copies light fixtures. So now we know there's a light fixture there, but then let's just say they change them. Should they delete?
There's no effect. The architect doesn't even know because it's on the receiving end. Revit doesn't pass it upstream.
But can the electrical pass it downstream so the architect just puts in placeholders? They know that there's going to be lights in that area.
They could delete them. What I would recommend is just turn them off. Use turn off the visibility. And this is in the architect's file. So with the architect, what I would recommend is the architect turn off the visibility of their lights and hand over the control. And it's just something that should be coordinated. Who's working on the lights now? Who's designing the lights at this point? And then link in the electrical, link in the lighting designer's file, and show those lights. So then you can see these are the lights that are going to be, presumably the lighting designer's prints are going to be the ones going to the field to install the lights. So then you can see what they're doing. And then you can see exactly, oh no, you got these rotated, these need to move. You can tell them immediately as soon as you reload the lighting file.
So to answer that next section of that question is pick up the phone, talk to them, and just say, hey, we need to figure out what lighting fixtures are actually going to go in here in case you do a rendering. It's going to show one type of light over the other type of light. So it needs to be a little bit of communication and collaboration between the architect and the electrical or the lighting, whoever's doing, whoever's putting those in. But
yeah, coordination and communication is important, even more so in Revit.
Statement: copy monitor would be an even better tool if the information in the monitored element updated if it changed without deleting, recopying.
I assume he means in the dialog box that I just had up, the postpone reject. You can do multiple ones at once. It's a little bit kludgy, but you can select, say if 100 lights changed, I can select 100 lines in that dialog box and do update with one click. Yep, update them all at once. Somebody asked if both models have fixtures, have you doubled the light fixture? I'm assuming he means in the bill of materials. And no, not really. Depends on how your schedule is set up. You could have it set up to read in a linked file, but by default it does not. So it's only going to read, assuming you're the lighting designer, it's only going to read lights that you have live in your file. And we are running close to the end. Let me demonstrate what happens. And this is one thing that I really like about the batch copy, is now Revit's watching for any new items. It says Revit has found, so I just reloaded the architect's file. So let's simulate, you get a new one, and they've added some light fixtures. Because I've batch copied monitor fixtures, Revit is watching for any new light fixtures and tells me Revit has found uncopied fixtures in the linked model. This one, what would you like to do? I can choose copy the fixtures and bring in all those new fixtures, which is a great tool. And I don't have to scour the drawing, I don't have to call them, I don't have to email them and find out that, oh, we added lights in the kitchen, and find out that, oh, it was kitchen and the dining room, but they forgot to mention that part or whatever. I let Revit do the math for me. Revit will scour the drawings for me. I'm actually going to cancel this for the sake of time because that step will take quite a while because there's hundreds of lights in this file that would be brought in. I love that feature. Let me switch back. One of my...
Yeah, folks, we are running short on time, so that'll be it for the questions. We're going to try and wrap this up.
So batch copy also monitors from new items when the file is reloaded. I really like that part of it. So just some best practices for performance. You can do the copy monitor. I'll just leave the slide up here. We're recording it, and assuming there's no technical issues with the software, we'll post this up. You can come back to the slide. I think the first one is probably first couple ones are the most important. Use copy monitor. Don't overuse copy monitor. Levels, grid lines, great. For the MEP fixtures, it's very useful. And you may even choose to stop monitoring once you've got the MEP fixtures copied in. If you do too much, just copy monitor everything, every wall, every slab, every floor, it can slow down Revit. The second thing is just once you've gotten to this phase, keep the file names consistent. Keep the file names the same, or else it'll break Revit. I'm just going to skip over the rest of those for right now and do a quick review, which is very simple. The first part of this, I copy monitored levels and grids, just levels and grids, especially levels. If you're not copy monitoring levels, you may really want to consider that. Grid lines can also be a big benefit. A lot of places do both of those. The second part of this is we copy monitor fixtures and equipment, and it's a really powerful tool. It can add some additional work at the end, but I think the amount of work it saves, depending on how it's set up, depending on how you go through it, you may want to practice this a little bit before you do the second one. And
upcoming webinars?
Upcoming webinars? Sure. We have a couple of those coming up. January 17 and 24, we have a couple of tools from the Tools for Revit, which we are carrying now. I don't know, is there anything you want to add on the Tools for Revit part?
Nope.
We're just going to cover Revit Family Management.
If you guys haven't had a chance on the tools for Revit, take a look at that. Basically, they're looking for gaps that need to be filled as far as things that Revit should do, and they've created tools around those, and that's what they call it, tools for Revit.
Yeah, it's stuff that I looked at years ago, and now we're selling it. February 14th is the next Revit Radio. If you haven't tuned into that, I've tuned into Revit Radio before I was working here, so it's a great question and answer series. I jumped ahead to March because that's my next webinar. We're going to look at Revit model performance, things that will make Revit faster, and there's a little preview of it in our newsletter. If you haven't gotten the newsletter, give us a call. We'll add you to the list.
Also, I believe there is a Rhombus meeting tonight.
Oh, yes.
So take a look at that. I think it's on the meetup groups.
Yep, it's a meetup group, ROMBIS.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain Building Information Society,
Yeah.
I believe is what it is. So that's going to be this evening. I believe that's going to be happening down at RNL. And again, just keep updated, keep in the loop with all of the associations that are out there. Again, if you guys have any questions, I apologize. I am going to be leaving the office here right after this webinar, but you guys can always email me and just let me know what you guys need, and I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. So,
and some of the upcoming events, if you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, the CAD-1, we'll often send out the events. If you want to, the first one on there, Revit Dork, is my name on Twitter. You can follow me there. I don't tweet all that often, so you won't get spam. I'm trying to keep it relative to Revit, and it's particularly Revit MVP, but most of the things there are just Revit in general.
Then we have some upcoming events happening, and we're going to leave those up there. Probably delete those from the webinar once we get through that. So, if you guys want to get involved in more of the stuff that's out there as far as AIA, AGC also, if you guys have never been to an ACE Awards, definitely take a look at that. Every single year you'll see projects that are featured at that awards program. It's a great place to network with folks also. Usually between 400 and 600 people attend that. So there you have it. Send your biz dev person to that meeting unless you have a project that's up there, and then definitely bring your team to it. So I believe that's about it. We do appreciate everybody logging in. We had a wonderful attendance today. Quite a few people showed up to the webinar. So if you guys have any ideas for webinars that we just don't do, shoot me an email, and we'll see if it's, if it's something we want to do, or if it's something that seems worthwhile. We'll do it for you guys, because if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be here. So we do appreciate you guys.
Do that. And if you have any questions about schedules, if you want to access these schedules, it's on our website. There's a couple different places, the webinars and events and just the general schedule. They're all on our website, CAD-1.com.
Correct. And don't forget about their retiring software. And I believe our 2.9% financing was extended. So let me know about that if you guys are interested. You guys have a great day, and go work hard.
Thanks. Bye.